Welcome to the Liz McMullen Show. I have a return guest, Lynn Ames. I don't know why she keeps on spending all this time with me, but she agreed to come on again. So
well,
it's
because you ask. You ask so nicely. And because you ask so nicely, I even flossed and brushed for this audio appearance.
That is so serious.
I know. I don't do that for just anybody. I want you to know that. This is a special occasion.
So, one of the things that I find interesting about you is that you're an undercover pantser. Not that you don't tell people.
Oh, you make it sound so dirty. You make it sound so dirty. I'm an undercover pantser. A pantser, for those of you who don't know, is someone who doesn't outline, who flies by the seat of her pants. And that would be me when I write. There's nothing really undercover about it. I'm quite plain about the fact that I don't outline. And, people look at me in shock, aghast, like I have, committed a great crime because I don't outline. But I don't work that way.
Well, I actually was talking to a friend of mine the other day. I was telling her that I was going to be interviewing you. And I said, I had 4 pages of notes where I found all these parallels and, all these like amazing little details. And, I thought it was so amazing to bring them up to you. And then you tell me you don't plan. I was like, oh my God.
It doesn't mean that I didn't put them there on purpose. Simply because I don't plan in advance does not mean that I'm not aware of what's in my books, darling.
So what's really funny is that originally we had planned to cover the 4 books in the Kate and Jay series. And then, of course, when I'm reading Final Cut, I see characters from All That Lies Within, and I see characters from, what's the name of the other series? I can't remember.
You're thinking about the Mission Classified series, which is insofar as Beyond Instinct and Above Reproach. This is Juan and Sebastian from those series.
I started reading Final Cut, and then I was like, oh, shit. Because there were characters from the books that I haven't read in quite some time. And I was like, damn, now I need to read those so I can make sense of this all. One of the first things...
I felt writing it.
What happened?
I said, imagine how I felt writing it.
Oh, my goodness. I can't even.
I can remember. I must remember from 13 years ago where I started here.
Well, when I met Sebastian in Final Cut, I was like, okay, so Sebastian is in the hot seat because Vaughn kind of gave didn't give him a job. He was invited by the president to work on counterterrorism and whatnot. I was like, when the hell did that happen? And I had to go through the other books to like find the connection as to when it happened and like the continued use of the connection. Sebastian's like a computer Uber expert. And so I was like, oh my goodness.
Can I stop you for a second? I am so glad that you were not lazy, that you went back and found it in the books instead of messaging me and asking me where it was. Thank you for that. Thank you for paying attention to the books instead of taking the easy way out.
Yes. I was like, oh my God. And then we have Dara and Rebecca from one of my favorite books of yours, All That Lies Within. I was like, oh, damn, I got to look there too.
It's an insidious plot to make you reread every book I've ever written.
It's a good thing that they're good books or else I'd be mad at you.
Good thing, then.
I had, many years ago, before you and I actually met, I found you on Amazon, and at that time I had lots of delicious reading time, and so I bought your entire backlist.
Oh, cool.
And I don't have them now because when I moved, I gave a lot of my books to the LGBT Center in New York City. So other
books are in the LGBT Center in New York City. That makes me very happy.
Yes. So a bunch of them are there.
My books have gone home. I haven't got my books out. That's fabulous.
Yes. So I had read the first 3 books in the Kate and Jay series, but I had done that, at least 10 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I had forgotten was how much peril they were in the first 3 books.
Yeah. Those girls did not have it easy.
Oh my God. It was just peril, peril, peril. And so when I started reading Final Cut, I'm like, oh, is there more peril? And there is. And I asked you if it was okay for me to mention it. It's not physical peril, or at least it doesn't turn into things that are as alarming as the first 3 books are.
They are not in any physical danger in Final Cut. I thought I'd give them a break. You know, they're a little bit older, and you know they don't move quite as quickly. And
they still sound pretty spry to me. They're jogging and shit.
Well, I mean, honey, they're my age or younger, and I'm still pretty spry and jogging and shit. So just remember, I work out every day. I'm in better shape than you are. So that's just not, and you're a lot younger than
you meanie. But do you know what was kind of hard for me for book 4, even though I knew in terms of biology it wasn't possible? I missed Fred.
Oh, nobody misses Fred more than I miss Fred. Now you're going to make me cry in the middle of an interview? Seriously, girl. Fred, those of you who haven't read the first 3 books in the Kate and Jay series, Fred is Kate and Jay's golden retriever. Fred. Fred was modeled after my light joy, my boy Alex, who died actually very suddenly himself when he was 7 years old. And I miss Alex, a.k.a. Fred, every single day. He was just the most marvelous guy. He's here all the time anyway. Dixie sees him all the time. She stares at him. It's very funny. And occasionally she channels him, which is also very interesting to me. I'll see she does something, and I'll say, "Oh my God, that's so Alex. Hi, buddy. How are you?" But I'm very. Who else does that, really? But I miss Fred too. But it was a biological impossibility to keep him alive 30 years later.
I know. And then when they were in Mimi Highland's house, and there was a very misbehaving dog, and I was just like, where's our boy? Because he was so important in the first 3 books, and he was an emotional support dog a bunch of times, and he was just a super little dude. And I also liked that he had backup nannies all over the place, because Kate and Jay were always on the move, and
Can I tell you a funny story about that?
Sure.
You'll like this, and this is a little known tidbit. When I wrote The Price of Fame, I'm not going to give anything away, but there comes a point in The Price of Fame where Kate has to go off somewhere and Jay is off somewhere. And, I wrote the plot and I went on about it, and I had several people reading the book as I was writing it, and they came back to me absolutely irate. And I said, "What is the problem?" And they said, "You didn't take care of Fred." I said, "What do you mean?" They said, "You didn't. Who's watching Fred?" "Well, they're away." I thought, note to self, never leave Fred behind. So I had to find somebody to take care of Fred at that particular moment in time. So every scene in The Price of Fame, I had to go back and figure out who was nannying, who was babysitting Fred. And honestly, here's something also funny. At that point, I vowed that I would never again write a dog in a major plot, because it's just so complicated to keep track of it. And then what happens? My children, Parker and Dixie, my real-life golden retrievers, Parker and Dixie, take over my computer and start writing stories. They're writing short stories. They're in books. What is this? I said I would never do it again, and yet here they are.
They're like the puppy mafia.
They really are. It's a good thing they're very cute, and they're very funny, and they make me money. Because if they didn't, they'd be begging on the street with sunglasses on and pencils.
Yeah, that's likely.
Pencils on the street corner.
That's as likely as you waking up in my body tomorrow. Of course you would never do that. Okay, that's just mentally complicated. But anyway, one of the things that I was interested in, and Above Reproach, when did you know you wanted to bring in characters from the Kate and Jay series?
I sat down and I started working on the plot for Above Reproach, and as I was working on it, I was thinking about the fact that so many fans had been asking me over and over and over again where Kate and Jay were, and if I was ever going to write another Kate and Jay book. And at the time, I couldn't fully envision writing another full Kate and Jay book. I always knew what Jay was going to be doing. I always knew that she would be a reporter for Time magazine, and then I knew she was going to become the great American novelist. I knew that about her. the problem was I could never quite put my finger on what it was Kate would be doing present day. And I was never going to shortchange that character by writing something cheap and easy that wasn't real, that wasn't true, that didn't really resonate with me for her. And so because I loved her that much, and still do, I vowed to wait until I was sure what Kate would be doing. But Above Reproach, the way I was able to work Kate and Jay into Above Reproach didn't really require me knowing what Kate was doing professionally at this point in time. It didn't. So I was able to bring Kate and Jay, and it made some sense to bring them into that plot in order to reintroduce them, and to, that was a nod essentially to readers and fans who'd been looking for them for so long. And it worked out fine. At that point, I still didn't know that I was going to write another in the Kate and Jay series. So all's well that ends well, and here we are, yet again, writing Kate and Jay, which I love, by the way.
One of the consistent themes that I see in almost all of your books relate to reputation of good people, as in something is affecting how they are seen by others.
Yeah.
In All That Lies Within, there's a reason behind the dual personality, and that's just to be able to not be encapsulated by how people expect that particular character to be. And poor Jay, she is as honest as the day is long.
It really is. Isn't it?
And she just...
Somewhat like me.
Yes. Yeah, but I know it's bad. I want to pick her up and swing her around. No, I'm kidding. But it's like the person who's so earnest and honest and, professional, and she just gets whapped left and right by, meanies out there in the different books that you write.
Well, but here's the thing, and I hope that you recognize this when you read Final Cut, and this was very important to me. Final Cut, unlike the first three books, which are more truly Kate-centric than Jay-centric, Final Cut, when they're all grown up and, 50 years old, this is Jay's book. This is really, Jay comes into her own in this book. This is really Jay's book. And I really felt strongly that it was about time to give that woman her due, and important for you all to see how far she's come and how much she has grown emotionally and professionally and in her self-esteem and in every way. Several times, it's not saying too much of a spoiler to say several times in Final Cut, she gives Kate a smackdown, and rightfully so, by the way.
One of the things that doesn't happen very often is a couple that has been together for quite some time being the central characters of a particular book.
Yeah.
And I know that Georgia Beers wrote one, and she felt that because she had been with her partner for quite some time that she knew well enough to write something about them. And I think one of the challenges with the series is to keep up the tension. And the last thing that you would have expected in a Kate and Jay book, with the exception of their reuniting after a really tense situation, that they would have a problem connecting with each other.
But that's true of long-term couples. It is true of long-term couples. Sometimes you just get to a point where you're misfiring. And the things that you have taken for granted, or the things that you do take for granted, sometimes come to the fore and get in the way. I really wanted to make this very realistic. And in that sense, I think it truly is. It addresses a lot of issues that long-term couples have. People were looking for more long-term characters who had been together for, some time, people that more reflected them in some sense. Not all of my readers are in their 50s, 60s, and older than that. I have a fair number of very young readers, which I love. But I really wanted to, in this book, deal with both sets of issues. So, and that was one of the impetuses for bringing in Dara and Rebecca. Dara and Rebecca are a brand new couple. They've been married for a year now because they got, they didn't get married in All That Lies Within, but, we were right there at the end of that book. I don't think it's a spoiler alert, because if you read Final Cut and you haven't read All That Lies Within, you're still going to figure this out pretty quickly. Right in the first paragraph. So I wanted to get balance there. So I think it was, I really wanted to play with a nice juxtaposition of an older, more established couple, a couple that's been together for a very long time. You know, Kate and Jay have been together 28, 29 years now. And this brand new young couple who are, you know, still in that very honeymoon stage and trying to find their way, Dara and Rebecca. And so I hope that in that, readers got a little bit of everything.
Yeah, and the thing that struck me is in my head, I felt that Dara and Rebecca were older than they actually were. So when there was a little unintentional age zinger, when Dara says that she had read in her history books about the Highland Report and whatnot, then she's like, oh, ow, ow, you heard about it in the history books, ow.
Well, that was intentional. It wasn't unintentional on my part. Obviously, that was intentional. And I just loved that dig. That was just fun. You know, that was fun to write. And I like the interplay between those characters. You know, you've got Dara, who's in her early 30s, and you've got Kate, who is now in her, you know, mid-50s, almost to her mid-50s. And I really liked, you know, the back and forth between them about those things. And it also gave these larger-than-life characters some humanity. It made them, you know, normal. It normalized them, made them everyday people, which they are. You know, I mean, celebrities, people who are in, you know, prominent positions, they put their pants on one leg at a time. I hate to break it to you, but they do. They're just like you and me. And, you know, that's kind of a cool deal.
There was another wedding off camera, and that was for Peter, which I was not expecting.
Huh. See? Got you there, too.
Spanish Inquisition. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
Expects the Spanish Inquisition. I actually did allude to that in Above Reproach, but nobody knew they were married then. They kept it a secret while they were active duty CIA. Which makes sense. Most active CIA couples do keep their marriage a secret because, you know, that's a vulnerability that you don't want to have.
Exactly. One point that I liked in Final Cut is when Kate's pissed off and tells Peter, "Don't ever handle me."
What? Kate pissed off? What?
I was just like, ouch, cool.
Well, you know, that's real life. Friends get mad at friends sometimes. It happens. It happens. And I mean, she didn't yell at him, but she, you know, told the truth. She stood her ground. She set her boundary. Don't handle me. And that's something that is very much something that someone like Kate, a strong woman, would say to her best friend. Don't handle me. You know, I've said it to my best friend on more than one occasion. Don't handle me.
So what attracts you to write stories that involve not just politics, but like presidential politics and the FBI and the CIA? What attracts you to it?
Well, for one thing, I lived part of that. You know, I spent a long time in my career in politics and government, and so it's something I know and understand very well. And as you know from having interviewed me before, it is imperative to me not only to entertain in my writing, but to educate a little bit as well. And fiction is a marvelous vehicle for telling the truth about some things that really need to be said. And my aim in writing things like that, in writing these types of political stories, is to make the reader think, to make the reader look more deeply in real life at the things that they see and wonder if what they see on the surface is really all there is. Because I'll tell you right now, it isn't. It really isn't. And so what I try to do here is not to preach, never to preach, but to give some insight, to give some backdrop, to give my readers something to think about as they go forward in their lives. You know, several of my plots have originated from real life instances. Certainly this book, Final Cut, does. It actually came to me as a result of an interchange between Condoleezza Rice, who was the Secretary of State under George W. Bush. I call him the shrub because he's not big enough to be a bush. And James Risen, who was a reporter for the New York Times. there was a story that he had. He had uncovered this story. He had done a lot of work on it, and he was on the verge of telling it in the New York Times, and she prevailed upon him, and the Times really leaned heavily on him not to make the story public, because according to the Bush administration, it would violate national security. In truth, what they really wanted was to cover their own asses, frankly. And Risen wanted to go ahead with the story, but he was overruled by his own bosses at the Times, who, essentially bowed to pressure from Condoleezza Rice and the Bush administration not to publish the story. So what Risen did was something I would probably do. He wrote a book. He wrote a book instead, and he told the truth in his book. And the book was not fiction, the book was nonfiction. He told the truth. And as a result, the Bush administration took him to court. They sued him. And not only did they sue him in court, but they charged him criminally. And they spent 7 years litigating this and ruined this man's life for telling the truth. He told the truth, and they made his life a living hell for it. And that kind of thing happens in real life, as you can see. And that was a real-life example of what happens. So I took a little bit of the Edward Snowden thing, and I thought about it all, and I thought, what's my message? What do I really want people to understand about the political process and about how our political world, our governmental world, really works? And thus was born Final Cut, and my effort to tell the truth about, it's a little bit over the top. Yes, it's a little bit over the top, but not a lot, frankly. There are a lot of things in there that are very, very real and really do happen. And I really wanted people to think about that. I wanted people to have a sense of what is possible and what is true. And I hope that I do that with my plots, with those kinds of plots. I want people to think. I want them to be aware in ways that really they have no other way to be aware. That's not what you're going to get on the news at night. You're not going to get the kind of stuff that I've been telling you in these books because, it just doesn't work that way.
One of the other things that strikes me about your work is the emotional element. And I think The Price of Fame really touched upon a lot of different issues that come from childhood sexual abuse.
Who writes about that in a romance, really? I do.
Am I right? Because I did not read all of your books in advance of this interview. Am I correct in remembering that One Love has a similar thing?
Yes. One Love has yes. It does.
It's like I'm mining in my memory for you, Lynn.
Remembering that without rereading it. Yes, it does. This is... look at the statistics. The statistics are abhorrent and much too prevalent. 1 in 3 girls, by the time they're 18, has been sexually abused in some way. 1 in 7 boys. That's outrageous. It's outrageous. But it's so prevalent that I really felt that it was important to reach that audience and to touch them and to tell them that they're not alone. And to tell them that those experiences, while they will shape their lives and will be forever with them, it's not something you ever forget. I know this personally. This is not something you ever forget. It's not all of who you are. It's not even most of who you are. It's just a piece of who you are. And it is something that we should talk about out loud. These are conversations we need to have. These are people who are whole and can be healed. And, I wanted to represent these people as being strong in spite of their circumstances and in spite of their past. These people rise and triumph over these things. And that the message I wanted to send is, you can do this. You can be those people. You are those people. You don't have to be extraordinary. You don't have to be a tennis champion. You don't have to be, press secretary to the Senate minority leader, as I was. You don't have to be, a reporter for Time magazine. Just everyday people are so strong. You're stronger than you know. And the other thing I wanted to do, particularly in The Price of Fame, when I deal with Jay's childhood sexual abuse, is I wanted to give a nod to partners and others who are supporting those people who have been through those kinds of experiences. I wanted to help them to know how to help their partners. And this is something I know. So I added that element into the story for Kate as a teachable moment, to sort of help folks navigate these waters. And the way I know that I succeeded in that was, The Price of Fame was the first book I wrote 13 years ago. And after it was published, I got a whole lot of fan mail, which was just a kick for me. I was just so blessed by all that. And I got this very long email from a woman, and she was in her 60s. And it took me a long time to read what she wrote because, she told me her entire life's experiences, which, let me just tell you, were absolutely horrific, just mind-boggling that she survived. And I got all the way to the end of her letter. And by the way, in the letter, she said, only someone who has been through what I have been through could have written this book this way. You understand in a way that only someone who's been there can understand what it feels like to be that person. And at the very end of the letter, see, I'm going to cry here. In the very end of the letter, she said to me, in all my life, 60 plus years, I've never told anyone what happened to me. But I want to tell you, you gave me permission to say it out loud. And if I never get another fan letter ever from anyone, that letter is what prompts me to write every book.
Now you're making me cry.
It's a free moment. Let's just have a moment. Use your sleeve. Use a Kleenex, young lady.
So, I think that you bring to light a lot of hard stories, and I still hate you for Eyes on the Stars for making me cry all the time.
Sorry, but can I just tell you that I'm sitting down now to write a romantic comedy? Would that make you happy?
No, I actually I saw the little back and forth between you and Anne about writing a romantic comedy, which you are you got shtick. You'll do well. Life is, one of the things that some people say they go to books for escapism or whatnot. When I've read some of your books, they're not easy reads. I mean, they're well written, but there's a lot of emotional journey as a reader that you have to go through as you experience the lives of the characters that you've written.
Well, that's life, isn't it? I mean, that's life. Life is like that, and if you want an easy breezy beach read, I love easy. Don't get me wrong, I love easy breezy beach reads. That's fabulous. But I really believe that there is a place in our literature for things that address important topics. Just because the fiction happens to contain lesbian characters makes it no less valid than mainstream literary fiction that addresses difficult issues. I mean, I think that there are books out there of all kinds for everyone. And I also am very adamant about not underestimating the intelligence of my readers. I have really intelligent readers, and I love that. I love all of you. You're so bright, and you get it. And I think, they want to be challenged in some way. They want to feel deeply. They want to be involved with the characters and to care about these characters. And I mean, I take such great pride in the fact that, people will come back to me 13 years later and say, how are Kate and Jay doing? Like they're alive,
Well, of course they are.
They don't exist just in my, little mind here. I mean, I think it's important to have all kinds of literature. And I'm never going to, bow to lesser standards just because my books are, contain lesbian characters as their main characters. I'm never going to, say that makes it, genre fiction in a way that is pejorative.
Mm-hmm.
It's not pejorative to me. It's great fiction that happens to have lesbian characters. It's not lesbian fiction. It's great fiction that happens to have lesbian characters.
So one of the things that I've been curious about, because Kate holds a position that you once held, and it was in Attica, correct?
Yes.
How did you interview for that job? Like, how did it feel having that job, being the first woman to have that particular role?
Okay, the job you are speaking about is that I was the Director of Public Information for the New York State Department of Correctional Services. that is the spokesman for the state corrections department, the third largest prison system in the country. No woman had ever held that job. I held it at 28 years old, and it was an incredibly demanding job, a ridiculously hard job, and hard emotionally, hard physically, hard energetically, as you can imagine. I mean, this was a very, very demanding job, and the entire time I was on the job, there were 2 nights in which I had an entire night's sleep. And that's crazy. That's just ridiculous. You know, I did get caught in the middle of a riot at Attica. That was my job. I did not get taken hostage, thank God. We're talking about the cost of commitment right now, by the way, the second in the Kate and Jay series. And by the way, just as a public service announcement, that is the only book in the series that you cannot read as a standalone. You really need to read The Price of Fame before you read The Cost of Commitment. Now, having saved you from looking at that book thinking, God, I have no idea what's going on in this book. Here's the thing about holding that position, Liz. When I interviewed for that position, it was because the governor asked me to. The governor asked me to. So I was pretty well assured that I was going to get the job because the governor was the one who wanted me in the position. And when the governor tells his employee, the commissioner of corrections, to hire me, it is likely going to happen that way. And so it did. And I had come from being press secretary to the Senate Minority Leader. I had a history. And I never, in the entire time I was there, I never thought of myself as the first woman ever to hold that position. I was the highest ranking woman ever in that agency, and it's a very large agency. But I never felt like I was the only woman. I mean, did I know I was the only woman? I was well aware that I was the only woman at a table full of testosterone. Let me tell you, it was very clear to me. But I never treated it like I was the first of anything. I treated it like, this is my job. I am more than qualified for this job, and I am going to kick the pants off this job. And that's what I did. It was grueling. It was difficult. And I will tell you quite openly that they made my life a living hell because they didn't want me to succeed. But I succeeded anyway because that's who I am, and because I'd be damned if I was going to let them see any weakness. I was never going to do that. So a lot of what Kate goes through in The Cost of Commitment, I absolutely went through that. The backroom machinations, all of that, yeah, that really happened.
Did you have a relation, because you were invited and presented by the governor, did you have the kind of relationship that Kate has with Governor Hyland in the book?
I had a very special relationship with Governor Mario Cuomo, the original Governor Cuomo, as I call him. He and I had a very special bond, a very special relationship. When I was a reporter, which is how I started my career as a broadcast journalist in radio, he would call my answering machine at home and leave me funny messages. He would invite me to the governor's mansion to play one-on-one basketball with him. When he gave the speech at Notre Dame, which he is very well known for, in 1984, he and I played pool in the governor's mansion and talked about religion and politics before he gave the speech. I mean, you don't get that kind of thing with often, and our relationship was very, very special. I pissed him off at one point, and he is not somebody who he was not. He died a year ago or so. He wasn't the kind of guy you really wanted to piss off. You didn't want to be on his bad list. He offered me at one point, and this is a little known tidbit as well, I played softball against him and for him, and I umpired some of his games, and he was a fierce competitor. This man was a fierce competitor. And he always said that I was the best left-handed shortstop he ever saw. And, we would play basketball in the driveway, we played softball. He knew I was an athlete, and we had this in common. And he came to me at one point and offered to talk to Larry King on my behalf. Larry King, CNN, Larry King, the talk show, Larry King. He offered to talk to Larry King on my behalf because he wanted me to be the very first female sports anchor on a national network. And I was young and I was foolish, and I thought the world didn't work that way. I thought I had to earn it. I thought I had to be in local television and, and do all this, take all these steps and so on and so forth. And I doubted whether or not he could get it done. How foolish was that, to doubt whether or not Governor Cuomo could get me a job at CNN as the first female major network sports anchor. My one great professional regret was that I told him, no, that's not going to happen. I don't have, the credentials. I don't have the background credentials for that. Even though I had the knowledge and I had a broadcasting background, I just felt like, that's major. And shortly thereafter, Hannah Storm came along and all this other stuff happened. And, every time I see a female on ESPN, I think, oh, honey, I could have been you before you were you. It was, honestly, it was my one great regret. But then if I had done that, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. And I love what I do. And so, everything happens for a reason, and I'm sure that happened for a reason. Our relationship was never the same. We're never quite the same after that. Mm. He didn't like that I didn't trust that he could do that for me. And the fact that he offered, and I said, no, nobody says no to Governor Cuomo. So that was that was my bad. Bad.
Do you know, it's more common in women than men for us to deem ourselves unqualified for a position. And the perfect example is Trump. You can't really find someone more or less unqualified for the position.
You just negated that. More unqualified. You can't find someone more unqualified.
Yes. Yeah. Do you know, I actually told, this is a sidebar about grammar. There's a song by the Cranberries, and she's talking about drugs, and she's telling them that it's not what it seems. And I'm like, if it's not what it seems, then it is what it seems.
Yes, of course it is.
And of course, it's like a really dirty thing. Like I was working as a busboy at a restaurant, and like the song came on, and I was like, well, if it's not what it seems, it is what it seems, okay? And it's more from a math standpoint than from a grammar standpoint that I was thinking about that. Negative, positive.
Right.
Anywho,
math is something I never think about. So yeah, go ahead, move on.
Moving right along. I like some words. I was reading, I can't remember which of the two books, but a president was speaking to Vaughn and telling her, that she had acted with valor. And I love the word valor. And I also like that you entitled a book, The Value of Valor, and then kind of, I guess it's an educational thing again. Mm-hmm. Of using these particular terms that are very powerful titles. I like titles that tease and tell you something or ask questions or make you ask questions about the book and then you want to read it. I have a hard time with titles that have absolutely tell me nothing at all about a book, and you're not guilty of that crime.
Well, thank God. I'm just, I've been for 3 days trying to title the new book.
Isn't it?
No pressure now.
Yeah, now that I pointed it out, oh my goodness.
God, I hope I come up with the right title.
Damn it. One of the misunderstood or bad calls that Kate made early on, and I believe it was in the first book. It's definitely in the first book. And she knew that she had a stalker. Uh-huh. And she's also a creature of habit. So she, she wakes up at a certain time. She goes for a run at a certain time, on a certain route, whatnot. And so...
all the things you should never do. Yes.
That's like being predictable is a very bad idea when it comes to personal safety, in which it was in the book. But she knew that she wasn't in true peril, but Jay didn't, and that was just the wrong person to put into that particular scenario. Like, Kate was fine. She wasn't thinking about it, and then, Jay is all tweaking out because she was not aware of backup or anything like that. And I was like, what a stupid thing to do. We make stupid choices as human beings. Of course, Kate's going to make bad choices, but...
Well, let me just say, first of all, I would not say that she was not in any peril. Because the truth is, anytime you have a stalker, and trust me, I've been there, done that, doing it now, you are in peril. Whether or not you have backup, whether your backup gets there in time or not is the question. Mm-hmm. and the bottom line is, Kate didn't give it a thought, but that's real life. She knew what was happening. She was being insensitive because, Jay had a history, of being attacked, being abused. And, for someone like that, that's a hell of a trigger. So should Kate have, warned her about that? Yes. But, in Kate's mind back then, and I hope you see the evolution of the characters in Final Cut, back then, Kate didn't give a second thought to things like that. She, was a big, strong woman, and she, didn't worry about anything, and she didn't take into consideration what other people might, be worried about. She was just a tough girl, and she was going to tough it out and go through it, and,
I've made poor decisions with the tough girl being the thought maker in a situation. It's like staying here during Superstorm Sandy, thinking, that kind of New Yorker thing is like, it won't be that bad.
Yeah.
That was stupid. I won't do that again.
Oh, as long as you learn your lessons properly and never repeat them again, then you're okay. And, and over time, Kate learned the lesson and recognized that, Jay needed to be dealt with differently. She needed to be informed of these things. She needed to be part of the process. Kate initially was thinking she was protecting Jay by not telling her. But, as you can see, it had exactly the opposite outcome. In the end, all she did was frighten the living daylights out of her.
Do you know, when you were talking about Kate being a strong woman, the first thing that pops into my head is when she's punching somebody. And, I can't remember, it was if she said...
Punched his lights out.
She's I can't remember if it was Peter or whatever, this is for this person, and this is for the president. Yeah. It's just like, whoa!
In the value of valor.
Yes, I know.
Take one, take this, and then take this. Here's another one for you.
Which I loved, because when she was running into danger, I'm like, what the hell are you going to bring to the situation? And then,
but you could see and that's exactly the question that people often ask of women, isn't it? What can you do here? What are you going to bring to the situation? And here's a little story for you. Let's go back to the actual prison riot at Attica. And the story I tell in The Cost of Commitment is absolutely verifiably true, except for the hostage-taking piece of it. Everything that happened in the time-wise and issue-wise and all of that was true. Okay, so but I had to get from Albany, New York, where we had been monitoring the situation, out to Attica, which is out by Fredonia, New York, which is all the way out by Buffalo. For people who don't know, it's a 5-hour drive, 6-hour drive, really, and about a 45-minute flight, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. So we had made the decision in the middle of the night that night that this riot was escalating and that we needed to be on site for it. So the commissioner sent me home to go get a change of clothes, to go change my clothes. I was at a picnic in Saratoga Park. It was Memorial Day. It was Memorial Day. Yeah, it was Memorial Day. It was the Sunday, I think, of Memorial Day weekend. And he sent me home to get a change of clothes. And remember, this is before cell phones or anything like that. I had a beeper. He sent me home to get a change of clothes, a couple changes of clothes, because we did not know how long we would be there. And I was instructed that I had exactly a half an hour to get to my house from headquarters, get my clothes, get to the airport to get on the governor's plane to get out to the riot, because that's how we were getting out there. Well, if I were going to tell you the map of where I lived at the time, it was a physical impossibility to come anywhere near the speed limit and make it in that amount of time. I lived 20 minutes away from headquarters. So, I'm sorry, do the math. It's impossible. And to stop and put a suit on in the middle of that, still impossible. So I was speeding a little bit in the middle of the night, with the full knowledge of the commissioner. And, so I was doing 100 at 2 o'clock in the morning, I admitted. And I was wearing shorts and a T-shirt and a sweatshirt because that's, at that time, remember, I came from a picnic, right? They beeped me in the middle of a picnic. As often happened, they interrupted my personal life. I can't believe it. But anyway, I got stopped by this trooper, a New York State trooper, who pulled me over. I didn't pull over for a little while because I was trying desperately to get home and get my stuff. Well, he finally pulled me over and made me sit there. I will cut a long story short. He was a 24-year-old kid who really thought that he was hot shit. I'm sorry, I'm still mad about this. All these years later, and this was 1990, I'm still mad about him. He finally came to the window, and I held up my badge so that he could see it, because I didn't want him coming with his gun out. I was doing 100 miles an hour, and I hadn't stopped for 5 minutes, you know? Not a good plan at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I wouldn't do it now if I had to do it again. But he came at me, and I explained to him exactly where I was going, whose authority I was doing it on, and why I was going there. And this 24-year-old punk, because that's what he was, looked at me and said, "You're a woman. What do you think you're going to do there?" That's what he said to me. I'll never forget it. And he made me really angry. Don't get angry at a trooper at 2 o'clock in the morning when you've been doing 100 miles an hour. This is not a good plan. And the end result was he kept me sitting there. He went back to his car. He told me I had to wait. He went back to his car, and I could see him and his partner sitting behind me. I could see them in my rearview mirror. They were in the cop car, laughing and joking. They made me sit there for 20 minutes. 20 minutes! While there's a riot going on in Attica, because this kid couldn't figure out what role I might play there. And the truth was, my role was the same as Kate's. It was my job, in essence, to be the mouthpiece, to be the thing that inmates heard, to keep calm, to prevent loss of life. Really? You're going to keep me sitting there for 20 minutes because you're a 24-year-old kid and you can't think your way out of what a woman might do there? So anyway, remember, I didn't have a cell phone. There were none. When I got home, I immediately called headquarters and explained why I was late. And explained, the same thing's going to happen on the way back. This kid's going to be looking for me. So could you please call ahead and take care of this? I mean, we were flying on the governor's plane, which, by the way, is controlled by, the state police. The same people who stopped me. I said, call your boss and ask if you want to verify that the story I'm telling you is true. Well, I got my clothes. I took off, heading back toward the airport, doing, 100 miles an hour. And by the way, that guy gave me a ticket. He gave me a ticket. And then he lied in court about it. Don't even ask me. It was a very big ordeal.
Wait, he lied about giving you a ticket?
No, he lied about whether or not his major told him not to charge me. His major told him to back down, and he didn't do it. He lied about that in court. And, it's my word against the cops, and they took the cops' word for it. I mean, I have a letter from the Deputy Commissioner of Corrections explaining what I was doing that day, and I still ended up paying an incredible fine, and I had more points on my driver's license in New York than you could possibly imagine. It's a wonder I kept my license after that. But on the way back, I was doing the same thing, having asked my boss to clear it. And sure enough, I got stopped again. This time I pulled right over because I didn't want to go through that again, thinking this is the same stupid-ass kid. But it was an older cop. And I explained to him calmly, nicely, where I was going and why I was going there. And he actually let me go. So I didn't get 2 tickets that night. I only got the 1. But it was a horrible experience. But this speaks to what you asked about. What good can a woman do in this situation? Well, I can't tell you how irate I was about the treatment I got. I don't know whatever happened to that kid. I can't remember his name now, thank God. He's lucky I can't remember his name now. But I'm sure he didn't go anywhere in the state police. And when I got out to Attica, the first thing the commissioner said to me, he was laughing at me. He laughed at me. Because his guys would never have gotten that treatment.
Of course not.
The guards never would have gotten that treatment.
Of course not.
So, yes, if you want to know if that kind of discrimination is real, and it was real back then, it absolutely was, and it was absolutely mind-boggling to me that you would actually endanger lives by keeping me sitting still for that long. But I didn't want to get shot, so I didn't move on. I have a thing about not getting shot.
It's funny that.
Odd that.
Very strange.
Yes.
When I was thinking about Kate running into that situation, I'm like, she doesn't have a gun. She just went in there half-cocked, tackled him, muscled into the situation and was able to come out on top. But for me, I was just like, you don't have a weapon. What are you doing? How can you have...
She is the weapon.
She had it. She had her own... It was her own gun. She was like, righty and lefty. Lefty being the stronger one because she's one of your characters and you're lefty.
Yes. Have to have something. Is Kate left-handed?
I'm sorry?
Is Kate left-handed?
No, I was joking because you're left-handed.
Yeah, but Kate is not. Kate, I think, is right-handed.
Yeah, I don't think she's left-handed. I was just
Any of my characters are left-handed. I gotta fix that.
Do you have any left-handed characters?
I don't remember.
I don't remember it either. I would notice it.
Yeah, I mean, now we're on a mission. We need to know.
We need... so we're going
to... listening will come back and tell me whether or not I have any left-handed characters.
I'm sure. Or these days you can go into your ebooks and do a search.
I'm not doing that. That's cheating.
I know.
So cheating.
So, listeners, if can we say that they'll earn a book if they can answer the question?
I'll send them an ebook if they can answer this. If they can answer this question accurately, whether or not any of my characters in any of my 12 books is lefty.
See,
yeah.
That'll be fun. I don't know if anybody will come up with it, but that would be awesome if they did.
And no cheating, no doing a word search in your ebooks either. That is just cheating. I need you to actually know by going through the books and reading them.
Exactly.
There you go.
So, one of the things that people who write historical fiction have the opportunity to do is to also teach while telling a good story. And Eyes on the Stars, I still have such a hard time with it, but I guess our desire for a happily ever after.
Mm-hmm. It's funny, I was talking to people about Eyes on the Stars today and about my experience at a very wonderful, large book club in Minneapolis that I attended in person back when True Colors Bookstore was open. I appeared, I think it was 2011 when Eyes on the Stars came out, which was not supposed to be part of this discussion, but I love that book, so I'm very happy to bring it in. And they were discussing what I meant about something. They were interpreting something in the book. And I let them go for 45 minutes, these women, and there were a lot of them there. There were like 40 people in the room. We're all going around about what I meant, what my intention was with this thing. And I'm not going to tell you because it would be a spoiler. But I was sitting there watching them go round and round about my book without asking me what I intended. And I let them go for about 45 minutes, and then I said, does anybody want to know what I was thinking? Just out of curiosity, do you want to understand what my thought process was with that? And I took them through it, and some of them, when I was done, still disagreed with me, and others were fine. But in fact, what I was saying today at lunch about this was, it reminds me of being in college and taking literature courses and how we picked apart Shakespeare and all of these great authors. And, as I was sitting there in this sort of surreal circumstance, I began to wonder if we were at all right about what Shakespeare really meant, or what Edgar Allan Poe meant, or Virginia Woolf, or any of them. Because as I was sitting there, I'm like, no, that's not what I was doing. That's not what I meant. But that you took that from it, well, that's fabulous. I'm glad that that's what you saw in my work. Everybody, you bring your own experiences to a book. You know this. And so as a result, you view it through your own lens, and that informs your experience with the book. And I, as an author, I love that is what happens. But yes, I mean, just as I said, who writes a romance with childhood sexual abuse? Who the hell writes a romance like Eyes on the Stars? And it's not a spoiler to say that the characters are apart for 65 years. Who does that?
I was so traumatized. The day that I finished it, I was trying to explain to my spouse what it was about, but I couldn't stop crying. I was going to the movies with a friend of mine, and I was trying to explain it to her, but I couldn't explain it without crying. I was just a fucking mess. And God, that was important, though. I have to say, because There are not a lot of neat little bows going on in history for lesbians or same-sex lovers in general.
Well, and I told the truth in that book. And I mean, Eyes on the Stars is a book about the women Air Force service pilots in World War II. And I'm sorry, it was just a couple of weeks ago that Congress was forced to pass a bill to allow these women to be buried in Arlington National Cemetery. The first woman was buried, was legally buried in Arlington just last week. How crazy is that? These women served their country in the 1940s with valor. Talking about valor. 1,074 of these women, 38 of whom died in service and never saw a dime for what they did and never got any credit for what they did because what they did was classified until 1977. It wasn't until 2010 that President Obama gave them the Congressional Gold Medal and that they were able to talk about their experiences. These were some of the most courageous, heroic women you can imagine. And that they were shut out of Arlington National Cemetery until just a couple weeks ago. Really? That's crazy. That's just crazy. But what I did, and I wanted in Eyes on the Stars to tell the truth about a piece of our history, to bring these women back into the fore where they belong, to give them their due in history. I was an American history major in college, and I did not learn about the WASPs in college. Wasn't in any of my books. And I think that's just unconscionable. And I needed to fix that, and so I did.
Yes, you did, Lynn.
Yes, I did. Take that.
Pow, pow.
Exactly. There's Kate again, blasted away.
Yeah, we need those. Was it 1960s or 1970s where they had the wham pow like things?
It was Batman in the 1960s.
Okay, I wasn't sure when. I knew that it was Batman.
I was a Batman fan, but really I was.
Yeah, I joke. I have the nickname Batman with one of my friends, but that's mostly because we have such difficulty getting in touch with each other that I tell her to put out a bat signal.
Everyone should have one of those.
Everybody should. My goodness. And I can't believe this, Lynn, but we've been together for an hour.
I know. Shocking.
You make this obligation to actually read all your stuff. You're a terrible, horrible author.
Oh, punish me.
Yeah, it's like you're just terrible because
my books.
I started Final Cut. And I was like, no, she didn't.
Yes, she did.
You brought so many characters from not just one book, from a couple different books, and I'm like, God.
Now, can I just say that was not cynical? Some authors do that cynically to try to get you to, buy in and buy all the other books and all that stuff. I don't do that cynically. I didn't do that cynically. If those characters had not been absolutely appropriate for this particular plot, I never would have brought them in. It fit. It all worked together. And in fact, even, because I'm a pantser, as I started thinking about the plot for this book, I didn't even know right up front that I was going to bring in Juan and Sebastian and Peter and Lorraine. It just sort of happened because they were absolutely the perfect characters for this story. Why would I create new characters when I have existing characters that have that skill set?
Oh my God, that was actually a note that I put in a lot of my Kindles, but I completely was not referring to it, is how did you come up with all those mangled sayings for Sebastian?
Oh, now that is the most fun thing to do in the world. Sebastian is one of my very favorite characters because he's French and he tries so hard to speak good English, but the boy just he can't quite get it right. So he mangles all these idioms, and I just so enjoy writing him. I have the best time in the world writing Sebastian, thinking of what next mangled phrase he might come up with that gets him in trouble. And I love that he does that. It's so human and so real that he does that, but it's comic relief. He is, in some sense, even though he's the one who's mostly in trouble here. It is comic relief, and I think in a book that is, it has such serious themes at its core, it's important to remember that not all life is serious. My life, is not all serious. I love to have fun, as you know. Uh-huh. And I love to have fun, and I love to laugh. I mean, that's like the lifeblood of what keeps us moving, isn't it? And okay. So, for that reason, I really enjoyed having some comic relief in that book. You really need some comic relief there, and Sebastian is the perfect foil for that.
And Beyond Instinct, because now I'm like, I'm going to edit this really well, I'm sure. So I wanted to know if you named Edgar Fairhaven out of irony.
Oh, a little bit.
Because he's not fair, and he certainly isn't a Haven.
Yeah.
And then when I saw Madeline Stowe, I thought about Harriet Beecher, the author of Uncle Tom's Cabin. What a random thing to come in my head. And I was reading, I was like, Stowe. I know Stowe's familiar to me somehow. So I had to do a little internet search to discover that. But yeah,
I crossed that. Think about this. I crossed that with Madeleine Albright. That's how I came up with that character.
Oh my God, how funny is that? I can't even stand it. It's like I told you, you have Easter eggs everywhere. You just don't know it.
I do. Well, and I love, some people will find the Easter eggs. Some people will go for the treasure hunt. And some people just want to read it and be entertained. And you know what? That's fine with me. I hope that my readers will take each book at whatever level works for them. If they want just a beach read out of it, that's what they're going to see. If they want just a beach read out of All the Lies Within, that's what they're going to see. But as you know, there are many, many, many layers to that book.
You just make my mind's like a pinball game. Ding, 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 ding. So I have to go back, and I was like, hold on a second, I have to look at this other book. Oh my God, yeah, that totally happened. And then I was remembering another interview, and I'm like, when I asked her about this book a long time ago, she said that she saw an article about the yellow cake.
In Iraq.
And I can't believe it, because I know that interview had to be several years ago. But
uranium. We were talking about the raw uranium.
Yes. And
that was an approach.
Yes, it was an above approach, but it's so funny. I was like, my goodness, I really pay attention, Lynn, when I'm on my game when I'm with you. It's a lot of fun.
Well, it is. It's a great fun, and I love that you find all the layers in these things. That really is a thrill for me. But like I said, I mean, I don't mind that people don't get all the layers, or that they do. I put all the layers in there quite intentionally, even though I'm a pantser. Because again, I am never going to dumb down my fiction for any reason, nor should I. My readers are incredibly intelligent people, and I'm not going to treat them like they're not. If they want, they'll find whatever they want out of my books. If they want a simple read, then they'll find a simple read. If they want to find parallels in life, and they want to find paradoxes, and they want to find depth and understanding of, back channels of history and of politics, then that's what they'll find. If they want to understand the emotion behind the characters and what drives them, they'll find that too. And I love that there's always something more to find.
Exactly, because there will be things that occur to me when I'm reading something now that, I didn't get into it, and because we're almost done, you and I can talk about it after I stop recording. But there's so many things that have happened recently that I could have tugged into this conversation.
Mm-hmm. Isn't Final Cut prescient? Prescient. Do you know how long ago I finished writing the book? And look at the things that are happening in the news. I'm sorry, today. Did I not call that right?
Yes, you were right, Lynn.
Yes, I was right, and I'm very happy that I was. And I was telling the truth, and now you know that I am really talking about things that really do happen. Mm-hmm. I am actually wired in, and I do know the truth.
Thank you for coming on the show again, honey.
You know what? Thank you for asking me. Thank you for doing this broad retrospective. I love to be able to talk about over time the evolution of this and all of the things that go into writing a series and all the things that tie it together. And I am just so appreciative of what you do. Thank you, doll. I really appreciate you.
Of course.